Miami Hurricanes just got a big recruiting flip last night with Hayden Lowe. Now we all want to know, who's next?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Miami Hurricanes fans, it is spatula season. You know Mario Cristobal is out there on the trail with the loafers on, looking to get it done. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we'll talk about how Miami can and should and hopefully will bounce back on the field when they take on Wake Forest, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, how Miami can get themselves into that ACC championship game, what we need to see on defense, and any tweaks we need to see on offense as well, because the offense was not perfect last week. We'll talk about Hayden Lowe and what he brings to the table. Miami, as we talked about last night on Locked On Canes, flips the 4-star defensive end. He had been committed to USC since June 9th. Jason Taylor was really able to build a strong relationship there. But, folks, let's talk about who might be next, because Miami still has irons in the fire with a ton of flip candidates. We got the man, if you're a Canes fan, you know Gio Milian, who is just, first of all, he's a great reporter. We all know this, covering recruiting, covering Miami football, South Florida sports. And Gio, I know you have been maybe anticipating some other possible flips out there. We talk a lot about guys like Ben Hanks Jr., DJ Pickett. Steve Wiltfong put out a piece this morning on On3 listing about a half dozen possible flip candidates. Do you think Miami's going to have some more flips before it's all said and done?
Definitely, they will. I actually think they'll get a few more before everything is wrapped up on December 4th. So I've been sharing in the private boards for well over a month now. I have a private board that's ran on Discord. A lot of people are enjoying it. And aside from the spaces and the shows that I have going on every week, but I would say the most likely guy right now, you're looking between Tarvo's TJ Alford and also Miami has real momentum with Ben Hanks Jr. out of Booker T. Washington. Has caught 9 interceptions this year, one of the best pure cover corners in the entire country. I've been told, like that recruitment's been described to me as monitor it very closely down the stretch. There's some people that have the belief that he ends up as a Hurricane. So those are two guys I'm tracking very closely over these next few weeks.
Now, you know, when Billy Napier, the coach of Florida, where Ben Hanks is committed, he got that vote of confidence last. A lot of Gator fans weren't happy to see the athletic director come out and endorse Billy Napier, but that happened. Did that, you know, I don't know if it is a factor with Ben Hanks at all, but I would assume that giving Coach Napier the vote of confidence, part of the hope is there that they don't bleed as many recruits, right? I mean, they already saw Joshua Moore, the 4-star wide receiver, flipped to Miami earlier this year. Do you think that endorsing Billy Napier was an attempt to solidify their recruiting class?
Yeah, I could definitely see that in a way. I could also see that they may have been doing that to try to keep DJ Lagway on the wagon there in Gainesville.
That's a good point.
And yeah, you know, he's had some impressive moments, Lagway himself. I think he's an exceptional talent. But in terms of like the grand scheme of things, recruiting, talent acquisition, I don't think it's really going to change much for them. They're probably not going to finish over 500. They'll have another losing season again. Miami has been eyeing guys on that recruiting class. They're still going after Vernell Brown III, which is a little more of a long shot for Miami, but they're still shooting their shot anyways. This is why you have hired Mario Cristobal as your head coach. You go into these battles and sometimes you come out on top, and people are shocked on signing day. Look, Dono, I'll tell you this, just even Hayden Lowe flipping from USC to Miami yesterday, not many of us were expecting it to happen on Wednesday. We were kind of caught off guard. I was overhearing some things that possibly over the weekend, but not on Wednesday. So Flipness has arrived early this year. The loafers are getting their steps in, and the work is happening right now.
All right, so I get asked every day, I'm sure you do as well, about DJ Pickett. I feel like that window's been closing. Even though they may not be always taking care of their business on the field, it seems like LSU is doing whatever they can to keep DJ Pickett locked in. Do you feel the same way? Is the window still open for Miami?
I think the window still is very open for Miami. Some fans got concerned when DJ didn't show up for the Miami and Florida State game. He was slated to be in there. He actually had homecoming activities that he partook in. And same thing for Miami's quarterback commit, Luke Nickel, that same weekend. Some of these guys, I think people got to remember, they're still high school kids. They want to feel normal at the same time. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami gets Pickett back on campus before things wrap up on December 4th. You have the dead period kicking in on December 2nd, that first Monday of the month of December. And really, Miami's on the road that last weekend right before signing day, because you got the Syracuse game on November 30th as well that weekend. So these next 2.5 weeks are super critical for Miami. They're going to have some guys visiting this weekend already. Actually, Hayden Lowe will be in Coral Gables this weekend, right after his commitment. So great stuff there. They got an official visitor next weekend for the Wake Forest game, in Kellen Wiley Jr., who I've said multiple times that Miami's in a great position for the 4-star linebacker. Miami's got some momentum here down the stretch.
What about more wide receivers? Because Steve Wiltfong in his article Thursday morning on On3, he brought up Jamie French. I get kind of mixed signals on whether Miami is still kind of in on French, who's been committed to Texas. I'm also curious about Dallas Wilson, because I start to see now Oregon head coach Dan Lanning being brought up as a possible hot candidate for an NFL job next year.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that's going to be reality or not, but if Lanning were to, who's like the up and coming commodity, if he decides to go to the NFL, then all bets are off for verbal commits there.
Yeah, of course. Anytime that you have coaching turnover, things change and whatnot. I'll share this on Jamie French. I've said for quite some time, and I don't expect it to change at all. He made a major long shot of any of those flip guys that they're trying to go after. Miami's not really even pursuing him at this point either. I expect them to stick with Texas. Now, on the other hand, Dallas Wilson, Miami has had contact with him throughout the process, especially even after the summer. The last time he visited, though, was dating back to the summer. It's been quite some time. I don't see that one happening unless Miami can get him down on campus over the next 2 weeks.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk more about Hayden Lowe, who just flipped to Miami last night. Not only more scouting reports, but also the relationships that caused this to happen. Because, folks, I want you to understand how good Mario Cristobal and his staff are at recruiting. And don't take it for granted, okay? Because there's a reason why Lowe, after being committed for nearly 6 months to USC, decided, despite the fact that he's in California, he's in USC's backyard, decided Miami was the spot for him. So, folks, we are not done yet. In fact, we're only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Folks, we've had so much fun already this year betting on college football, betting on the NFL. College basketball is in now. I won a 14-team parlay the other day. I'm having a blast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, guys, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I, he's from Locked On Wolfpack. I'm, of course, from Locked On Canes. We host Locked On ACC together. We've had a lot of fun talking about conference championship scenarios. Now, we know Miami, they control their own destiny. Win out, you're in the ACC championship game. Same thing with SMU. Clemson still has a shot. If they win out, they only have one ACC game left, actually, so they don't even need to win out. They just need to win out their final conference game against Pittsburgh. Clemson can get in if Miami loses once or if SMU loses twice. So Miami's got to take care of their business if they want to be in that ACC title game. We got Gio Million with us. Follow him on X at Gio Million. So, Gio, you mentioned you got, and so did I, got caught off guard by the timing of the Hayden Lowe announcement for the flip last night. I was aware of the continued relationship that Jason Taylor especially was building with him. JT went out to California to see him about a month ago during Miami's previous bye week. I hear the way Lowe talks about Jason Taylor, the opportunity to be coached by him. And then also, I was reading a comment that Lowe made yesterday. I'm sure USC fans weren't happy to hear this, but like he mentioned that even since he's been committed or had been committed to USC, they had never really made him feel like their number one priority, whereas Miami always did. And these are the sorts of stories I hear repeatedly from guys who commit to Miami. And it reminds me what a great job Mario Cristobal's staff does in making these players feel important, making them feel needed, and making them feel like family.
Yeah, you're right on point. Actually, Mario Cristobal and his coaching staff, they identified Hayden Lowe as their top guy as an edge rusher for this recruiting class. They made it clear from the spring heading into the summer official visits. Actually, ironically enough, I mentioned in a recent write-up that I shared on X about 3-4 weeks back that I was told over the summer that Hayden Lowe, at least we were expecting him to commit back then. Then he ended up visiting USC the week after and committed there. And I was kind of caught off guard. I took an L that week. Honestly, I really did. Maybe the source wasn't entirely off because Miami stayed in contact with him. He stayed in contact with Miami. And here we go. The kid ended up flipping without even taking another visit yet to Miami. He'll be in Miami this weekend, but phenomenal job by the recruiting staff. Phenomenal job by Mario Cristobal. Also, the connections there dating back to Kayvon Thibodeau, who Mario Cristobal recruited out of Oaks Christian High School back in the 2019 class. Thibodeau ended up going on to become a top 10 NFL draft pick with the New York Giants as well. So hats off to them. And even Jason Taylor. He took a personal approach with this recruitment. Had the chance to talk with Hayden Lowe quite a bit throughout the process as well. And that was really one of the biggest deciding factors for Lowe was how he feels he could be developed on the next level. And he leaves a lot of trust in Coach Jason Taylor's hands.
I like it. I'm going to love watching Jason Taylor have the chance to work with Hayden Lowe and also to work with a guy like Herbert Scroggins. We talk about what Miami's got committed. I know Miami fans may not realize, I mentioned this last night, Gio Scroggins is the sack leader for the entire state of Georgia high school this year.
17.
Regardless of classification, 17 sacks this year. So JT's going to have some new toys to work with.
Well, by the way, for the people that love star rankings and whatnot, Herbert Scroggins wasn't a blue chip recruit when Miami first started recruiting him. They identified him early and turned out to end up being a blue chip recruit. Now he's a top 200 guy.
So what on Hayden Lowe, what stands out to you, if you've had a chance to watch some of the film and any feedback you've heard, what makes us believe that this is going to be a great edge rusher at Miami?
Biggest thing is size ready, can play right out of the gate. A little different from some of the pass rushers that Miami took in the previous class. A lot of very pure speed guys, guys that can get after the quarterback and whatnot. A year ago, like your Marquise Lightfoots and Booker Pickett's and Elias Rudolphs, those guys still needed to put on weight. Hayden Lowe can actually come in and play right away. He's, like I said, size ready. The other thing too is his natural ability already to diagnose. And what I mean by that is be able to play against the run, because this is a big thing for defensive ends that they come into college football. Yeah, you can get after the passer and whatnot, but are you disciplined within your game that you understand the concept of contain and the concept of setting the edge? And Hayden Lowe is actually very capable doing that. He's a much more advanced defensive end.
All right, so let's use that as a segue into what's currently been happening on defense for Miami. Because when you bring up setting the edge, I have flashbacks to a few days ago at Georgia Tech when Miami was not interested in setting the edge whatsoever. I thought it was really tough game for Tyler Barron especially. So yeah, maybe this is the right time to go into a bye week. I know that it is fair to a certain extent to say that after 10 games, defense is who they are, right? You're not going to just dramatically, transform them into, a top 5 defense coming out of a bye. But it does seem like there are certain techniques that I would think are fixable, Gio. To what extent, we'll find out. Like, what do we need to see from Miami's D coming out of this bye week? You've got to beat Georgia Tech, or you got to beat Wake Forest. You've got to beat Syracuse if you want to get into the ACC title game. What sort of adjustments do we need to see from this team?
Well, I think to keep it in perspective, I think if any fans are expecting some immediate turnaround from the secondary, that's very unlikely at this point of the season. Obviously, it would be great. Damari Brown will be evaluated over these next 8-9 days leading up into the Wake Forest game to see if he's ready to go. And then you're likely to get back Elijah Alston, which will help you on your defensive line, especially on the edges as well. And Popo Aguirre, he's expected back for the Wake Forest game too. So you get some key guys back. Simeon Barrow's okay, just a little minor injury that he had against Georgia Tech. So for the most part, Miami's going to be healthy heading into the Wake Forest game. The other thing is against the Demon Deacons as well. They have a little bit of a tricky offense to cover. That slow read option and
mesh,
and they have multiple ways of attacking you with that. So that's all about how the defenders read their keys. They have to be very disciplined. I'll share this though. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me, at least with the Georgia Tech game, was the misalignment. The defensive line not even shifting over, being outnumbered on the strong side as well throughout the game. And it's just like you're watching this bad movie that you knew what was about to happen, but it still happened anyways. And you're still disappointed at the end of the day because you knew what was going to happen. It's unfortunate, but I do think Miami could somewhat mitigate the problems. I think you're going to have to play a little more zone. This defense cannot really play man coverage really at all. You got to play some zone. You got to play 4-man up front and play in front of your man. Not much stunting inside. There's this belief that I spoke with a coach recently that shared the thought that when you have to stunt inside constantly and consistently, then you really don't trust your defense to actually get after the quarterback and create pressure, which I think is a crazy thing because Miami's defensive line has been very productive throughout the year up until the Duke game with a quick 3-step drops, and then Georgia Tech, just running it all day, and then worst defensive line performance for Miami the entire season, which was really shocking.
Is there, I hate to even say this because I'm such a huge fan of his, but Kiko has not been playing well this season. Should we be seeing more Popo once he's back healthy? Should we be seeing more Jalen Alderman, he made one of the biggest plays in that Georgia Tech game? He had that tackle for loss on 3rd down that gave Miami an opportunity on offense to try and go out there and win the game. Do we need to mix in some different guys at linebacker?
So in essence, the way they list the positions and whatnot and how guys are lined up in the depth chart. So Jalen Alderman tends to see the field more when Miami's out in a 4-3. Sometimes he comes out in the 4-2-5 in place of Wesley to give him a breather and whatnot. So I think it's just matchup dependent when you'll see him on the field. Now, the other one you mentioned about, I'm drawing a blank again. Donald, remind me, who was the other? Popo, yes. Popo and the linebackers just in general, the middle linebacker position. So he was starting to get more reps before he had his injury, unfortunately. He was really starting to flash as well. I think he has more ability in space, like coverage. That was one of his best traits coming out of high school, actually, especially in 7-on-7. Nowadays in 7-on-7, you don't see many linebackers playing anymore. He was actually one of the few left that was playing because he could play in space and cover guys. Now, the thing with Kiko, though, I agree with you 100%. And I think a lot of it has to do with the trust level factor that they have with their safeties on the back end of this defense. I'm going to call a spade a spade. The safety play that Miami's getting this year, and I hate to say it, but it's very truthful. It's really bad. I'm talking about possibly Casey Rogers, AJ Highsmith level of bad, and that's really bad. If you're a Miami Hurricanes fan and you've been watching this team over the last 20 to 25 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But with Kiko, they're not using him the same as they were a year ago. Last year, they kept everything very much in front of him. He was working downhill, blitzing, hitting the gaps. Now he's dropping back into coverage. He's not comfortable doing those type of things. I think you have to get him back into what he's best at.
Yeah, well, no, it's true. I want to talk about the offense when we come back because, and listen, we've been so spoiled by the level of offense this year. They were not perfect, or at least not good enough against Georgia Tech. And I've got people now. The offense lost them that game. I don't feel that way, but they did leave a lot of meat on the bone last week. Let's talk about what we need to see from the offense against Wake Forest and against Syracuse. My friends, we're not done yet. We got Gio Milian with us. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Game Time. The Game Time app is the only ticket app that I use because, guys, not only are we getting the best deals, but the prices on the Game Time app go down the closer you get to the event. It really is a beautiful thing. Procrastination gets rewarded, finally. They've got a new feature on Game Time called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love on Game Time game-changing features like the all-in pricing feature. Shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. On Game Time, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Game Time has your purchase on Game Time is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. How about that? You sign up with our code, we give you $20 off. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review. Get us wherever you get your podcasts. Joined by very good friend of ours, Gio Milian. So, Gio, we saw some uncharacteristic things against Georgia Tech from Miami's offense. Just 3 for 10 on third down. They best third down offense in America. Did not show it last week. Just 1 for 4 on fourth down. I don't mind the aggressiveness, but I thought a lot of the play calling was not good on fourth down, in my opinion. I thought that was probably the worst game for Shannon Dawson and for Mario Cristobal last week. Cam Ward even left a few plays on the field. What were your big takeaways from the offense? And does this stuff feel fixable? Do we need to run the ball more over the next couple of weeks? What do you want to see?
I like some of the points you brought up, actually. Even before I get into it, I'll double confirm on the Game Time app. I've used it before. Great app. Ticket prices are phenomenal. So you're getting a recommendation from myself here too. And on the point of the Hurricanes offense, I shared this right after the game, and some people went at me. They were like, "Oh, like how could you say that?" or whatever. I think it's reality. I have this belief that when it comes to coaching, that you cannot coach based on what has happened in the prior 9 or 8 games before Georgia Tech. You have to coach based on tendency and what is happening in the current game. And I feel like Miami left points on the field. You had the opportunity to kick 2 field goals. You have one of the top 5 kickers in the country in Andy Borregales. And the difference was a 5-point differential at the end of the game. You hit those 2 field goals when you had the opportunity. You possibly win that game. And that last drive that Cam Ward was on when he had the strip sack fumble from Romello Height. You know that if you're a Hurricane fan and in recruiting, you especially know that name very well. But I think they handle that drive completely different. So in terms of the offense, obviously they were not themselves. Yeah, you mentioned the third down conversion rate, 3 for 10. The fourth downs going over 3. All of those fourth down attempts were on Georgia Tech's side of the field, which makes it even more brutal. And I just had fans even telling me afterwards, they're like, well, you know, we've been phenomenal on third down and fourth down this entire year. So why shouldn't we have gone for it, Gio? Well, like I said just a moment ago, flow of the game. I don't think you coach based on what happened in your prior 9 games. It was clear that your offense was sputtering a bit. I think Miami went away from the run a little bit too early. I think they've had that tendency throughout the year, especially, for example, I know the game got kind of out of hand for them against California this year, but they were running the ball exceptionally well, and then they had to get away from it. I think Miami has to establish the run much earlier, get things in control. And the other thing, too, especially with the defense that Miami has this year, I think you want to get the ball in Cam Ward's hands as much as possible. As much as possible. And I'll share this. Michael Yo from Comics on Canes, a good friend of ours, actually, he shared yesterday. He said, man, you know, if you can get Cam Ward the ball like 10 times in a game, he'll probably score maybe on 5 or 6 of those drives, at most, maybe 7 or 8 of them. And, you know, at that point, it's just in a numbers game. You outscore the other team. And again, you see Georgia Tech having an 11-minute drive, second best and longest drive they've had in school history. That's not a good stat if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan or if you're one of the coaches as well. So I deduce everything down to, I feel like Miami lost the Georgia Tech game boiling down simply to coaching.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. And it's so people that are pointing that out, whether it's you or me, we're all right. One thing that annoys me though is people go back to, see, Mario's terrible. And like I had thought the previous 9 games, I thought Mario managed very well. I mean, you don't pull off comebacks like the ones Miami pulled off if you're not managing situations well. Unfortunately, they didn't, in my opinion, manage situations well on Saturday, but it doesn't undo, the previous 9 games to me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I also think that they still don't use the tight ends enough. You have Elijah Arroyo averaging like 22 yards a catch. You have an offensive weapon like Elijah Lofton, who should be playing more and getting more opportunities. And Dono, you even mentioned the play calling on fourth down. I mean, come on, a rollout to the opposite throwing arm of Cam Ward.
That's what I didn't like at all. And that was like a 4th and 1. You should have run that right up the gut with Damian Martinez,
which they've shown all year they've done. Yeah. And Damian Martinez was hot on that drive. They were giving him a ton of carries, and they went away from it. I mean, it's coaching. It's coaching at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we got to bounce back with that. And Gio Milian, I appreciate your knowledge and your insight as always. Make sure you follow him on X at Gio Milian. Anything you want to plug for the rest of the week? Any spaces, any shows you got going on later this week?
Yeah, me and Amon Richards will be on live tonight on our weekly show as well at Who Wants Smoke _Inc. on YouTube. Also, by the way, I know many of you Hurricane fans have been wondering where you can get the shirt that Michael Irvin has been wearing on the sidelines this entire season. So Caneswear now has them. Go visit Caneswear at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, or at caneswear.com. If you sign up today, you get 10% off on your first order.
I like it. Great people there at Caneswear. Thanks so much to Gio. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in. Make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe on all platforms. Follow us on X at Locked On Canes. And we will talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.